Now we move on to actually one of the most, I think is going to be one of the most interesting things I've ever done, because we're going to be talking to Vinnie Mirchandani. And Vinnie, we've talked to Vinnie and we've talked to him about markets. We've talked about the future of analysts. We've talked to him about a number of things. But this one, this is one I'm actually jealous of. I'm never jealous of anybody, but in this case, I'm jealous because he wrote a work of fiction. Okay. And that's been my like dream. Look, writing, as he knows, I know we've written, both of us, I think Vinny's written 10 books. I've written 8 books. Um, Writing business books is one thing. Writing fiction is a whole other thing. Because while look, I'm not going to go through the plot or the details because we'll talk about it a little bit in the conversation. But and also, I want you to buy the book. So we won't go too deep on that part. But he drew from his real life experience and the real life experience, I think, of others that he observed with his co-author in the book. And you can see, by reading it, I can see that. But at the same time, fiction's straight out of your imagination, right? It's not writing a business book. Is you got objects you can look at that you can write into the book, so to speak. This just is totally out of your imagination, and that's hard, man. That is so hard. Anyway, Vinny, look, he's a well-respected analyst. He covers the entire enterprise world. He's one of the gurus when it comes to SAP. In fact, he's had several books on that. I'll say this, he's respected enough so that every conference I ever go to, I see him there. But every conference he ever goes to, he doesn't see me there, right? So that's how well respected he is. So I want to bring in my dear friend and literary fiction author, Vinnie Mirchandani. There you are.
Paul, you are always so generous. Thank you for having me. And by the way, the book is called
I got a slide for you. Don't worry.
the AI Analyst. And I wish I had interviewed Sarita for your previous guest for the book. She sounded very, very empathetic and knowledgeable. So, but
Hey,
thank you so. Oh, there you go. Thank you. But thank you for making the introduction. Looking forward to discussing with you. And yes, Paul, fiction is very different than what you and I write about.
why
Okay,
don't
and
you go dig into that though? Really let people understand that.
let's just give the audience a little bit of a background in the book, okay? And then we'll go into all your questions and some of
Okay,
the points I wanted to make.
take it away.
So book is about uh, AI billionaire in Silicon Valley, okay? Barry Roman. He runs a company called fictional. All this is fiction. Fictional company called Polestar.
Uh-oh.
Polestar is into
That's
AI.
fictional? I just bought stock. Uh-oh.
No, not the EV company. This is an automation company. So Polestar is into all kinds of AI and also robotics, drones, every kind of automation you can think of. Okay, they're not just software centric. And Patrick Brennan is an industry analyst like you and me. He works for a company called Oxford Research, an analyst firm, and he's based in Barry is in the Valley. Um, Patrick is based in my part of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida, and he used to work for Barry for about 5 years. Actually, helped to launch a number of their vertical products. Okay, so suddenly the guy disappears, and his firm has a set of labs that has worked with the FBI.
Oh,
So he
wait.
knows
To be
people.
clear, Barry's the one who disappears.
Barry disappears. That's right. Barry disappears. Patrick's firm has worked with the FBI. So he says, guys, if you need any help, I worked with the guy. I know his friends. I know his enemies. I know everybody around him. So lo and behold, he becomes embedded in the search first, and then the investigation. So that's what the outline of the plot is. Now, the twists and turns are, the FBI is convinced this guy's absconded. Our industry, Paul, we think we are such purists, we're such wonderful Do you know the biggest single portion of the FBI most wanted list is for cyber crimes? We're a bunch of scumbags in our industry. So
Yeah.
they're convinced this guy's absconded. Patrick says, no way. This guy is more about, he's not about flight. He's always about fight. And here are some suspects we need to look at. And by the way, Oxford has a bunch of co-pilots. One of them is focused on, um, for use for detectives. It's called Sherlock. They also have one called Curmudgeon, which is to help analysts do a CRM watch list. Basically, the first level of any Magic Quadrant or CRM watch list.
That was
This
based
little
on you
tool
and
can
Dennis
generate.
Howlett.
So the suspects include the estranged wife, it's bitter divorce they're going through, a disgruntled executive, a former marketing executive. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Very humorous section about the guy. Um, Chinese intelligence, the Italian and Latin mob, a lot of Latin gangs involved in the book. And they use all kinds of co-pilots and bots and so on in the whole search and investigation. So that's the broad outline of the book.
So let me ask you this though. This is how. First of all, you have a co-author,
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly. Kimberly? What's her middle
McDonald Baker.
name? McDonald Baker. I remember Baker, but I'm missing McDonald. Kimberly McDonald Baker. How did you and she decide to do this to begin with?
So Kimberly used to work for Oracle. So I met her when I was at Gartner and she was at Oracle, and she was in the application side. And she came to me and said, "Vinnie, you know the analyst world very well. I know the technology marketing executive world pretty well. I have an idea for a book." And this is 25 years ago.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
And every 5 years she would pester me and say, "Vinnie, we're running out of time. We need to do it. We need to do it." Last November, finally, I said, "Okay, I have a little bit of time, and the world has changed so much with generative AI and so on. And California's changed a lot. Florida's changed a lot. There's a lot of interesting themes we can bring into the book." Okay, so that's how she deserves credit for pestering me and convincing me to write this. Okay.
So how do you? So one thing I've always wondered if you I mean I've co-authored stuff with no business stuff, but co-authoring fiction is
It wasn't easy. It
I
wasn't easy
can't even
for me.
imagine how you do it. How do you do it?
Well, partly, we know the subject, right? She knows the technology market from a marketing perspective. I know it from an analyst perspective. I mistakenly thought two of us would be able to just crank it out in 3 months. Well, basically, we ended up with two different books. I was into all kinds of GPUs and LLMs and the technology, the fantasizing about all that. She was more into the social aspects, social as in charity events and the wealth of Silicon Valley and so on. Okay, so we had two different books. Unfortunately, we had two other people who really should have credit for the title of the book. My longtime editor, Mark Bavin, who edits all my books, and my wife, Margaret Newman, and I'll explain the role of each. So Mark looked at it and he said, Vinny, this is a bunch of crap. I mean, there are two different books here. We need to bring it together. And both of you need to cut back quite a bit. You've got too much technology for a fiction book, and she's got too much social stuff that the plot doesn't fit with the plot, neither of your stuff. So that was good because he took the machete out and kind of put it together. My wife, on the other hand, she's retired now, but she had a career in psychiatry. So she read it and goes, you said, Vinny, this is a geeky book. Give me an example. She goes, there's a scene early in the book where the chief counsel of Polestar calls an emergency executive meeting because the CEO is missing, right? And she closes the conference room door and says, everyone put your cell phones in this basket, and tells the assistant, put the basket in the microwave. And so, people go, wait a minute, what's that? You give me to fry my phone? Okay. Basically, We moved on to the next scene. She goes, Vinnie, you guys are nuts. You got a high testosterone set of executives in the room. Let them scream and say, my whole life is in that form. What the hell are you doing with it? One of them goes, well, is John Snowden in the room? What the hell are you guys doing? Right? So she extended that scene based on emotions that come out. And over again, we ended up extending scenes to bring out the human emotion. This is one big difference between fiction and what you and I write. We don't stop and look at the human reaction. We write about products, we write about, hey, this code is wonderful or whatever, right? We write about objects. We don't write about humans.
Right.
In fiction, you really have to bring the human emotions out. And Margaret did a great job from a readability perspective, adding a bunch of emotion into the book.
Well, I mean, there's a right brain and a left brain, so to speak. And when I first started out way back in CRM, I started out by my analysis of the CRM industry was way too heavily left brain, and that human behavior had to be accounted for much more. So I used to teach what I used to call whole brain CRM, right? And it goes right to your point, which is you combine, you have to talk about things that situate a book, right? Meaning fiction or nonfiction. I mean, but to Margaret's point, to Margaret's point primarily, I guess, really, we're dealing with human behavior here, right? And how people really, and that's the part that one of the things I've in my reading so far, and I'm almost done. I mean, literally, I'm probably 30 pages short of being finished. And
well,
I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it. And one of the things that specifically, like, I really have liked throughout is the personality. I'm in the beginning of the book, I was looking more at the objects that is setting the stage, I guess, is more like it. And sometimes that was in just descriptive, and sometimes that was within conversations that were going on, and so on. But probably by around midway, I had a real good sense of the personalities of the people who were, critical to the progress of the book and to the case. And
one other thing that Margaret did was she forced me to go back and read John Grisham. John Grisham writes about,
I used to read him.
And she said, if you read his books, everything has a legal angle, right? The jury, the client, the firm. It's all about law firms and so on.
Yep.
But she said law is a dull roar in every one of the books. He doesn't harp on, procedures and detailed documents and so on. You need to make your book where technology is a dull roar rather than overwhelm people with details of this is what, when you put a prompt in ChatGPT, it turns it into 2 Unicode characters, then that gets turned into vectors and so on. I have it in 1 paragraph, but I had like 5 pages on that, right? So she really helped me refocus. That's another big difference with fiction is you cannot make it a technical manual.
Right. Well, and that to me, the hard part is it's coming, even with the knowledge you have, it's still coming from your imagination one way or the other, right? It's not just the knowledge. It's interesting. Surrealism had this form of writing called automatic writing, which I actually practice and have for decades. And what it says is you have a subject in mind, and then you just write. And I mean, you just write. That's all you do. You don't sit there and thoughtfully work everything out. You write. And then you edit. But the way you edit is by writing on top of it. And then writing on top of it again. And then writing until you're happy with the result. What always happens, and it literally, in my case, at least in 5 decades of doing this, it's always happened, is you come out with a very vivid work, right? And the reason being that when you're editing, quote unquote, that second time, what you did the first time is not gone from your brain. It's there. And that's the continuity is there. It's just not always fully conscious and focused. It's just there. And it works with you to come up with eventually a very polished piece of work.
And you mentioned another thing that Kimberly did, but some of the characters are almost entirely hers. Not too many, but you read about Chad, the CMO in the book, the buffoon in the book, who is the old school marketing guy, big on pomp and pageantry and so on, not so much on the modern digital CMO. But that was her. That was her character. Okay. She also Elizabeth, who is Barry's estranged wife.
Yeah.
Just the pain of the lady, where this guy's cheating on her all the time, and she's trying to hide everything from the kids. I could not have written it. Well, you and I, as men, could never have written that section. But the pain is so real that it automatically makes her a suspect,
Yeah.
right? So it helped that we focused quite a bit on certain characters, but bringing it together took a lot of effort. Um, the other thing is also, I like to, even in my innovation books, I think products and places tell stories. So we have so many places in the book that we, like in California, for example, we've got the Ritz Carlton, Half Moon Bay, we've got the Pebble Beach, Inn in Pebble Beach, and in Florida we have a bunch of the James Museum, the Vinnie Hotel, and so on. So each one of them, to me, also tells a story in its own way. We brought out a lot of places around the world, the Western China, some in India, and so on too. So that was another thing we built in.
Well, one thing that actually comes out quite a bit, and this is partly because I know you, is how you're a very proud Florida resident, and that actually comes out in the book, right? Even though you're not obviously you, but the book itself is, I'll say, the people in the book are very proud of living in Florida, and it's pretty obvious.
Well, only a few of them. Only the Oxford guys.
Right. But there was a good place for it. But here's the thing, because I do know you, and I know that is part of your being. It works well in the book because the characters are reflecting something that you actually feel, right? And that actually,
but
translated.
One of the detectives, Lars, is very suspicious of Patrick because he's from Florida. Remember, there's a scene in which he tells Reggie, "Why the hell did you invite this guy? Why didn't you invite Governor DeSantis?
Yeah.
You might as well have brought the guy in and then had Newsom and DeSantis go at each other, right?" So, hey, not everyone likes Florida.
That seemed funny.
To your point, somebody's asked me, they said, that Patrick is based in Florida. It must be based on you. And I go, no, Patrick is much younger, much smarter,
Right.
much better looking, and all that. And same thing, people have said, well, who is Barry? It must be somebody you know. And I go, no, it's a composite. It's a composite of a number of CEOs, billionaires that I know. Most of them are actually much less, Barry is a very exuberant guy.
Yeah.
Others are much more toned down. So, every one of the characters has had 3, 4, 5 people we know. They do reflect real people, but it's a composite.
Well, one thing that you made work with it, and this is another thing. I my entire career has been writing, and not just my career, my education. I mean, I was in journalism school. I majored in English. Creative. I was writing when I was literally 4 years old. Not, I started writing. So I am a student of writing also, as well as the output itself, but a student of the voice and the style and everything else. And that's one of the things that makes the book strong, which is that the you can, I'm going to put this sort of in a slightly strange way. You can feel the writing. Okay. So, and that's very powerful. I by the way, I mean, I highly recommend people buy this physical book. You can get the Kindle for $9.99, or you can buy the soft cover for $21.99. I will tell you this: we're going to have, if you happen to be coming to our conference, IRL 2025, first, at least as of now, Vinnie is going to be there, and there will be 30 of his books there too, for people to get. But limited editions, folks. So
Limited edition because I will autograph
that's
those who want an autograph. I'll be happy to
hoping you would say
autograph.
that. Hoping you'd say that. I didn't want to.
A lot of people will probably say, "Don't let him ruin my copy of the book."
Well, no. You know what? I always had a thing about autographs. So I always thought, why does anybody even want my autograph? I would tell people, look, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign your book, Mickey Mantle, because that's worth a lot more money.
On the same in the same way. I was in a line of people, signing books on one of my books, and I always ask them, "What would you like me to say?"
Yes.
Usually, my default is keep
Personal.
on innovating, right?
Okay.
Well, this guy, I was so focused on just the long line. I was so just focused on writing. He whispers to me. He says, "Right, you owe me $1 million." And I started to write, and I said, "Oh, you almost had me."
And he would have taken it to court.
Uh,
Well, you signed.
I'm glad I got my sanity back.
Me too. It was signed. You would have had a signature there that said, "I owe you $1 million." So one last question on the book. Well, two, but first one and most important one is: any more fiction in the works, or is it too much?
I mean,
Did you
Margaret and
enjoy
I
the
were on a
process?
cruise, transatlantic cruise, and I had an idea for a cruise-based whodunit. So too early to say.
There,
Paul,
there have been those. I've read a few of those out there. There's the good news about doing a cruise base, aside from the fact that your research is pretty awesome, right? It's like the most enjoyable research in the world is, I've got to do it. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to make this billionaire. So I need the penthouse suite, right, on the cruise. But there's also some guys on YouTube who are cruise experts who have really good insights that would aid a novel.
oh, Paul, there's a whole ecosystem of
Yes, I know.
folks who, I was on our cruise. I was shocked how many people had done 50, 75, 100 cruises. It's like,
Listen,
where do you guys find the time?
we were on a cruise. I am not joking. We were on a cruise where this last cruise Yvonne and I went on about a month ago, a little less than a month ago. There was a person who was on their 15th consecutive cruise on that ship. And they literally have a section. This is what they do on cruise ships, I found out. They have a section where if you're one of these people who's going to come back on, first of all, you can choose your own same room if you want. Secondly, though, you just get off because you have to, and then you come back on. I mean, it's literally like you don't have to start the process over. You just walk off so you can walk out. You already have your new card, and then you walk on, right? And it's that simple. That's how many. And they told me of a person, the guy, we had a suite, so we had a butler, and the butler was this awesome guy named Rudy. I mean, just 30 years. He's hilariously funny, really smart, like super smart, amazingly attentive, and just knows how to carry a conversation too. So he told us about a couple who had been going back and forth, not on this ship, but on another ship on Celebrity. They would do this every year. They'd go from April to the following January, go home for 2 months or 3 months, and then do it again. And they've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years.
I got one better than you.
Okay.
He's got a YouTube channel. He's called Super Mario. The guy's been doing it for 20 years. He does 50 weeks a year on Royal Caribbean. He's a financial advisor, runs his business from the cruise line. He says, I only go back. He calls it his dry dock 2 weeks a year in December.
He docks at his house.
Yes.
He docked it, then he takes a tender from his house to the ship.
And the guy, they asked him, how do you decide? Is it the food? Is it the entertainment? He goes, I don't eat much. I just work. I just enjoy being on the water, and surrounded by my internet, and I can do my business. And people are very.
And the other thing, you have so few decisions you have to make on a cruise. That was my whole thing. I said, look, when you're on a cruise, there's only one decision you have to make. Do I walk or take the elevator to dinner? That's it. Right. That's about it. So, I mean, it's so, Yvonne and I, like, you guys are we just love cruising. Anyway, we are.
I have a couple more ideas on fiction books, maybe in the Patrick sequel. But you know how it is. Books are draining, Paul. You know, you need to take a break. You need to do some real business for a change.
Not me. I'm retired, so I have no real business I have to do. I can just play with PPN, right? That's me and Brent's fun. Listen, one last question, and I'm going to put up the slide for this too. Is how can people get the book? And there's your answer, and that's the link to the book on the left there.
Well, Amazon released it yesterday,
Yes.
both on the Kindle, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. If
I am, but I bought the book. I'll be buying it.
If you just want a single copy, it's $9.99. They also have a print on demand, which is $21.99. And in the next couple 3 weeks, you will start to see become available in other channels through, you know, an agency called Ingram Spark. You know, that you use quite a bit. So that's but Amazon is the easiest way for now to get it.
And I will also let everybody know, since I used Ingram Spark when I did Commonwealth Self-Interest. Ingram Spark has a retail channel of 30 to 35,000 retailers that these books go to. In one of them, for example, is Barnes & Noble, and it's global. So this book will be widely available. So keep your eyes open. But obviously, as Vinnie said, Amazon's a place. I'll leave that up right now before we close the show for a minute so that you can take down the nice and short link to the book on Amazon. So grab it. And Vinnie, you know, as always, thank you. And I highly recommend that people read it. And
I do have to ask you a question.
Yes,
Two questions. Quick ones. What did you think of Soto's mega contract? And what do you think of Aaron Rodgers and the drones in New Jersey?
Well, I mean, as far as Aaron Rodgers,
by the way, I'm kidding. We can take this offline.
I'll put it to you this is Soto. Yankee fans are a very toxic fan base, and of course, I am a Yankee fan, but I'm not of the toxic variety. I actually like the Mets, and I like the Jets, and you know, they're just not my number one teams. But Yankee fans are saying, I can't believe for $5 million he gave up his legacy. And my basic opinion of that was he was a rental for a year, for God's sake. He had no legacy with the Yankees. And not only that, he's 26. His brain literally finished forming this year. I said, how do you talk about a legacy at that point? It's ridiculous, right? He did what he does. I don't miss that. He did what he does. He's making some stupid comments now. And if some of these other things are real, it's a little bit silly, like demanding that his mother gets a closing allowance. You can pay for her clothes. $765 million. You can pay for your mother's clothes, for God's sake. But the Mets gave that to her. But I was not one of these people who I would love to have had him, and I was thrilled to death to have him for a year. I really was. He was fun to watch. He's smart. You know, he's a great baseball head, aside from having the theatrical presence that you kind of need to have to be entertaining, and can really hit. He can't field much, run. He's okay, but nothing special. But if Aaron Judge, I would have been upset, right? But him, nah. And look what we got. We got Fried, we got Williams, and now yesterday we got Bellinger. I mean, we're going to have Cashman's doing a great job with the offseason, and we still got $10 million left on what we would have paid Soto, right? For another, we need a couple other position players, but you know, honestly, doesn't bother me in the slightest. He went to the Mets. He really doesn't. I mean, in 10 years, the Mets are going to be stuck paying him an awful lot of money for a player who will start declining probably. And at the same time, I wish him well because he really was a good guy to watch and be. And I enjoyed him as a person, but he's a kid, okay, and doesn't have a legacy. So, see you. You know what I mean? Anyway, thank you for asking the question. Okay, Vinnie. So, I think people will now have time for Amazon. I want to thank you and Sarita for being here. And when you're ready to write your next one, let me know. We'll do another show just on what you're thinking.
That would be great. I'd love to get some input before rather than after. But thank you. But the reviews, Paul, have been so far have been very, very positive. So it's been well received.
It's gonna be fun to watch the ride. Now I'm gonna be sorry I finished it because then I won't be reading it anymore. So I will probably see you somewhere soon in January.
Well, we'll see you in January for
Yes,
sure. I mean,
sir.
maybe tomorrow. Happy birthday! If I
Thank
have
you.
my final trip of the year. So if I don't make it, it's because I'll blame the airlines. But happy birthday!
I'm willing to take that for a good reason. All right, my friend. Big hug, of course. Mm, love you and congrats, man. Big one.